Bob was diagnosed with cancer in 2020. He had cholangiocarcinoma, which is quite a rare cancer of the bile duct. So it took a little while for them to realise what that was about. Once he had the diagnosis and he had life-saving surgery, he was offered chemotherapy, and over a period of a couple of years he tried different kinds of therapy, but unfortunately that didn't work. And eventually in 2022 we realised that it was likely that it was life-limiting. So we were introduced to the hospice through the palliative care team, Hospice at Home, and we were invited to come here and have a look around, which was lovely because we were very much in the early stages. We had time to look, not to come in to use the services, but just to get our orientation. And at first Bob was a little bit reluctant because he wasn't thinking of it being the end of his life. He was still hoping that the chemotherapy would do the job it was intended to do, but over time we realised that wasn't going to work. We were then linked in with Hospice at Home, and the nurses that came to see him at home were amazing. They were able to talk to us about what the hospice could offer and what they could offer at home, and I think ultimately Bob would have liked to have stayed at home, but as the disease progressed and he was in hospital, the symptoms worsened. We did try for him to be at home, but unfortunately they couldn't offer the care that he needed to keep him pain-free. So when we realised that his symptoms were going to get worse and he wasn't going to be pain-free, they realised they had a space here, which they said was quite unusual at the time, and did he want to come in, and he said yes. So at that time we thought he might just be able to make it for 2 days, but they gave him such good care and relieved his symptoms that he managed 2 weeks, which was really helpful because he had a chance to relax. We had a chance to relax together. I was able to let go of my role as his carer. One of the most significant things I will never forget was one of the staff asking me if there was anything they could do for me, and I wasn't sure if they were speaking to me. I thought Bob was stood beside me, but when I realised I was on my own and they were asking me, I found that quite emotional because nobody had asked that before. In the 3 years I'd been caring for him, nobody had asked if I needed any help specifically for me. And that's how it went while I was here. They were just very kind. I've described this place as the thin space between heaven and earth. It's just one of those places you don't want to be in, but once you're here, you don't really want to leave because you feel safe. Bob's background was military. He was a Royal Marine in his teenage years. He was a bandsman, and he then left when he was 20, and I met him then, and he joined the RAF. But his time in the Royal Marines, he never left him. And one of the things that we were able to do here was to bring in the Royal Marine Band, and they played in the quadrangle, and it was quite a special time because it was less than 24 hours before Bob died. And so he was able to sit and listen to some of the music that he played as a young man. A couple of the bandsmen knew him because Bob worked in the dockyard on the security, and I feel he was at peace by that time. And I feel the people here, Carol, the chaplain, she was incredibly helpful. She supported us to have time with our family. his family came to visit from around the country. We had the last Saturday here, we had friends and family coming in and out to have a little time with him, his grandchildren, quite young grandchildren. So they were supported by Meerkat service, and everything just seemed to fall into place. So although it was a sad situation, I felt it was the best we could have at that time. I was so glad that we could be out of the hospital and into the hospice, and I will be forever grateful. And also since he's died, I've been able to come, don't need to make an appointment, just ask at the reception if it's okay to come through, and sit in here and sit with the memories. Some of our wonderful memories of the bird feeders. I brought lots of bird seed and squirrel food, and it was outside of his window, and he was able to see the wildlife. And Bob had a very strong belief. He had a very strong Christian belief. He had been chaplain to some of the museums in Gosport and Portsmouth. So he was able to express that here. He felt that his needs were being met on a spiritual level. So I think they don't just look after you physically, they do look after you spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And I would encourage anybody that has a need to come here to come and give themselves an opportunity to just experience the quietness, the peace. One of the things that stood out to me while I was here is that I felt it was like a maternity ward. My experience of being in maternity situations, you can be in a room on the side, everything's happening, busy. Outside, you can hear the sound of people talking and laughing, and you know, there can be such a balance of the busyness and the joy of being together. But it did give me a sense of not only do maternity services see people coming into the world, but this service sees them going out with dignity and with love. After Bob died, my youngest son and his family were planning a trip to Thailand, and they asked if I would like to go with them. And so we went at the end of January, beginning of February, and it was going to be over the time when Bob, the anniversary of Bob's death. And I thought, why not? This is, since Bob's death, I've tried to say yes to most things because we realised life is short. During our trip in Thailand, I was able to do some zip wiring. So I thought it was just one trip out and one trip back, but by the time I climbed up onto the first platform, it turned out that there were going to be 8. So I actually did 8 zip wires through the trees, and it was the most exhilarating thing. And I realised that through my caring role, we'd been very limited as to what we could do. And the lockdown, everybody had that sense of being restricted, but this gave me a chance to experience adrenaline again and have fun. And I did this with my son, and most of what we did was laugh as we went around through the trees. But when I came back, I thought, what can I do to keep that pace going? And I realised that I could do a jump for a tandem jump for the Rowans Hospice. So that would be amazing to raise the funds. I think I could probably raise a little bit of money for that.